When it all began 30 years ago, impossible. Could not believe it, that we would discover an organ that represented the sixth sense, and that we could change the behavior of people. I was a professor of anatomy at the University of Utah, and 30 years ago, I was doing some studies on certain components of the human skin, which I extracted from the human skin, and I put them in some flasks. Usually in the laboratory, people are very serious. They really concentrate on their work. They don't talk to each other too much. One day I noticed that the behavior of the people working in the laboratory changed.
Whose turn is it anyhow?
No, it's not my turn.
Their mood changed.
You can play
They were
bridge.
more friendly, more chatty. They wanted to relate to each other more, and which was very unusual.
What a cool game.
On other days, I noticed that the people went back to their old serious way of behavior.
Then, David Berliner began to notice a relationship between the flasks being closed or open and people's moods.
I love pizza.
Anything?
Could these flasks contain chemical messages that were affecting people's moods?
Nice, County.
He wondered if he'd possibly stumbled onto human pheromones. But his work at the time prevented him from following up on the hunch.
I like anything on pizza. No, but I've had
So I put the flasks in the deep freeze for the next 30 years.
Someday, he hoped to investigate if these skin extracts might contain human pheromones. Throughout the animal world, scientists know that pheromones have great influence on regulating behavior. Pheromones are chemical messages sent by one member of a species to other members of only that same species. Pheromones influence many different types of behavior, often setting the cues for sexual and mating activity. Lion to lion. Pig to pig. This boar has a powerful sexual pig pheromone called androstenol that's present in his breath. For these sows in heat, it's a real sexual turn-on. In animals, pheromone messages are detected by a special organ in the nose known as the vomeronasal organ, or VNO. But in human beings, no one had ever proved the existence of pheromones.
So you come in here a lot?
Could human beings also be powerfully affected by invisible chemical messages? Through some sort of sixth sense? And what would be the detecting mechanism, the human equivalent to a pig's VNO?
What, the place?
In 1703, a Dutch army surgeon, Frederick Reich, discovered and described the VNO in a wounded soldier. He reported it and drew it in the medical literature, but thought it had no function. Almost 300 years would pass before anyone paid it serious attention.
I asked Dr. Larry Stancis, a University of Utah neuroanatomist, for help.
I told David that we would first have to find something to receive the pheromones, something equivalent to the animal VNO. My colleagues began to peer up the noses of hundreds of human subjects. And to our amazement, they found VNOs in all of them.
The VNO is located in the lower part of the nose. It's completely separate from the olfactory nerves higher up in the nose, which are responsible for our usual sense of smell. To understand the nature of the VNO, Larry Stancis began to examine its cellular characteristics.
We got excited when we saw these cells in the human VNO because they looked just like the ones that we had already seen in the animal VNO. And here are the cells which look just like receptor cells. It's on this actual surface that we think that activation by pheromones has to occur. Maybe just like other animals, humans could accept odorless chemical messages that could influence our brains and our bodies.
For help, David Berliner turned to physiologist Luis Montiblanc, who was about to leave the country to return to his home in Uruguay. Berliner begged him to stay to find any sign that the VNO might be a responsive, working organ. Monty Block designed a device that could deliver minute amounts of different substances as small as a few molecules directly to just the VNO. If the VNO responded, this device could measure electrical impulses at the point of contact. Different substances were tested in experiments to see if the VNO would produce a response.
When we exposed the vomeronasal organ to a placebo, there wasn't any response. When we exposed the vomeronasal organ to a scent, there wasn't any response. When we exposed the vomeronasal organ to the pheromone compounds, the meters went off scale like the 4th of July. It was amazing. We were astounded. We couldn't believe it.
I got very excited to find out that there was a reaction at the local level in the VNO, but we still didn't know if it really had a reaction in the brain or in behavior.
Berliner guessed that if the suspected feel-good pheromones affected the brain, they'd create changes in the central nervous system, skin response, temperature, respiration, heart rate.
As we explored these brain responses to different pheromonal compounds delivered to the VNO, we found that they were sex-linked. For example, with some compounds, only men would react, and with other compounds, only women would react.
I forced him to go back to the lab and do the test again.
The results were definitely sex-linked.
We had species specificity, we had sexual differences, effect on the brain, effect on behavior, and therefore we had human pheromones.
The work done by Berliner's group is potentially of great importance, and it would be very exciting if they could demonstrate that pheromones are used by humans for purposes of communication and played a role in sexual behavior. Certainly humans have all of the organs that are necessary for pheromones to play that role, but the evidence isn't in yet that that is what they're actually doing.
So for the first time, one scientific team claimed evidence of human pheromones. But in social situations, do human pheromones really shape our different reactions?
Thanks.
There's something about her.
There's something about him. What a creep.
We humans have this whole system of chemical communication that nobody knew about before, which means that we're talking to each other chemically in all sorts of different ways at an unconscious level.
The research suggests pheromones, chemical messages, are emitted from human skin. In the nose, they trigger chemical receptors in the VNO. Signals are sent to the hypothalamus, which produces reactions in the body and in behavior. But how much influence do they have?
Pheromones are just one of many influences that act on the hypothalamus, which in turn is just one of many brain areas that are involved in determining behavior. For example, pheromones might set the mood for falling in love, but many other parts of the brain would be involved in determining whether this was the person you wanted to get married to.
To enhance the mood for sexual attraction, the perfume industry offers thousands of potions. Some make use of certain animal pheromones which carry strong scents that people find attractive, like musk, the most famous, which is from deer. People enjoy them for their wonderful smell. But is there any real hidden pheromonal response?
Some of the fragrances on the market have androstenol, which is one of the pig pheromones, and sometimes people have made claims that this is an aphrodisiac. Well, it is an aphrodisiac. It's an aphrodisiac in pigs. If you like pigs, by all means go to the pig farm, but otherwise stay clear.
Scientists at Berliner's company, Ferrin, are inventing new substances derived from human pheromones, which they call vomeropherins. Berliner has ambitious plans to develop vomeropherins as a new kind of pharmaceutical. If Berliner's right, someday vomeropherins may instantly stem panic attacks and affect other functions of the hypothalamus and the hormonal system, to suppress appetite, to affect fertility, or stimulate sexual interest.
The benefit is that we are applying locally to the VNO these substances that send a message to the brain, and then the brain sends a message to the body to cure these diseases. Therefore, there is no contamination in the body, and therefore there's going to be less side effects.
Biologists have often wondered why humans don't seem to rely on messages received through their noses in the important way that other animals do. With the discovery of human pheromones and the functioning human VNO, the mystery may be solved. Through this sixth sense, we may be a lot more dependent on the nose and chemical signals than we've ever believed.